Hey guys, welcome back to the BuzWeaver channel and Happy New Year as we go into 2022. I'm going to be producing a video later on today going into some of the ideas and concepts that I have going into 2022 for YouTube here, for you guys here on YouTube, as well as for all my new tech followers who I want to thank also for all your guys' support, those on Rumble, Odyssey, and BitChute. We'll go into that a little bit later today. Now, since last week into this week, of course, we were going through a holiday, so I didn't go into some of these articles, but I'm glad I kind of waited because I want to kind of put them all together to kind of reestablish, because what we do here on the BuzWeaver channel, as many of you may know, is we take the complicated, we take the difficult, we take the confusing, we take the tumult that is often created by mainstream media and the establishment and break it down into a digestible format that everyone can understand, because it does come down to very basic, simple communication. And of course, since the mainstream media is in the communication business, they have a tendency to kind of utilize and tweak their messaging with framing and just the way they present the media or the way they present information to try to drive a narrative and to kind of, give everyone the perception that they are the authoritative voice. So, from Breitbart, establishment media cast doubt on CDC's shortened 5-day quarantine guidance. The establishment media on Wednesday cast doubt on the Center for Disease Control and Prevention's shortened 5-day quarantine guidance over concerns that updated rules are driven by money and not science. After nearly 2 years of flip-flopping C-virus guidelines by the CDC and Dr. Anthony Fauci, the establishment media is alerting readers the latest quarantine revision is unacceptable. Really. So here it is, right here, guys. The establishment media is alerting readers. So, as we have mentioned, I like taking these articles and segments and illustrating to you exactly what I have said and maintain. The mainstream media sees itself as the authoritative voice. Now, as you know, on YouTube, they consider mainstream media also the authoritative voice, as well as on mainstream platforms. But as we get into this video today, I'm going to show you how even the experts, the very creator, the very inventor, the very discoverer of something in particular, which we'll get into here momentarily, how if it's not accepted by the mainstream media, by the establishment, as we saw with President Trump, they will ban you and they will suspend you and kick you off the platform if you are not on the correct messaging. Now, let's talk about what we have talked about here for quite some time. What is the establishment? Can you show us examples of the establishment, as sometimes people often say? I absolutely can. From Reuters, Delta CEO asks CDC to cut quarantine time for breakthrough C cases, okay? Washington, D.C., the 21st, from Reuters. Delta Airlines Incorporated chief executive asked the head of the U.S. Center for Disease Control and Prevention on Tuesday to shrink quarantine guidelines for fully vaccinated individuals who experience breakthrough C-19 infections, citing the impact on the carrier's workforce. All right, so here we have it. Why was as Molly Ball says in her article, the cabal of people, the establishment, she calls them the cabal, I call them establishment, you call them whatever they want, the powers that be out there, they're of any particular name you choose, but I go with establishment. She goes with cabal, doesn't matter. The point being, these individuals wanted to make sure that President Trump was not the president coming into 2020 and into the next 4 years, because President Trump had held many of these people back and was benefiting the country versus these individuals benefiting themselves. And we see it even more in detail here from Unwoken Narrative, Delta Airlines and CDC's unofficial partnership. The request on December 21st, Delta CEO Ed Bastian asked the CDC to reduce the quarantine to 5 days from 10, impacting operations. The CEO said that the 10-day isolation period would negatively impact Delta's operations. It's just business. A week after Delta's letter, the CDC answered, CDC now recommends only 5 days of isolation without additional testing. It's not about health. So here we have it, ladies and gentlemen. These are key examples. These are points that I can show you, right? These are dots on a piece of paper that I can say, here is your evidence. Here is your information. Here is the microphone slowly sinking down. And here's your evidence. Here is the details that people often think about or ask me about. Well, I know you talk about it because, see, here's the basic thing. When it comes to the divisions among people in the political arena, in the landscape of the tribal warfare, there's often, of course, the tactic of making the other guy look unprepared or not having the correct information, as it were, not having the experts or the facts or the evidence and those sorts of things that are constantly debated. So here we have it. These are the specifics. Now, typically what happens is when you present this sort of evidence that is obvious and blatant in your face kind of thing, of course, the opposing tribe will often try to reimagine it, redefine it, restructure it, and then, of course, come up with their own interpretation of it. But here it is. These are the facts. You see here? The establishment media is alerting readers. Why? Why is it the establishment media's job to alert people on things? Sure, give us information, provide us with the information, but the idea that you're the authority in all this is absurd. And then we have CEOs, and it's not limited to just Ed Bastian. This is across the establishment, across the board. But as this unfolded, this was actually becoming so evident, right? The evidence was so profound. The evidence was so solid. The evidence could not be denied that even on Twitter, yes, the Twitterazzi, the echo chamber of the left, where they congregate and get together so that they can go after certain groups or individuals and so forth, are now really not sure what to do here. From the Daily Mail, the CDC says go out there and start licking people. Twitter users mock 5-day quarantine recommendations by dreaming up outlandish things the organization could suggest next. Now see, here all of a sudden, now you have the left. You have the echo chamber left mocking and intimidating the CDC, but there's no conspiratorial accusations. There's no conspiracy accusations. There's no absurdity or suspensions or banning. Right here from Cat Herding Science Nerd. The CDC says you can now run with scissors. And there we have from Kishana. The CDC says just go out there and start licking people. So you see, they can say all these things. And it's totally fine. Now, I believe these are all off Twitter. So you can see them just bashing the CDC. This is the echo chamber left that has spent all of their time going after anybody who would say anything about Dr. Fauci, who would say anything about the CDC, who would question the science, right? I mean, if you're looking up a car, for example, and I've seen this kind of meme that makes a lot of sense, right? If you're doing research on purchasing a car, they call that doing research. But when you research on the vaccine and health options that you could pursue yourself and ask your doctor, well, that's a conspiracy. So now we're seeing this narrative being driven to a point to where even the actual experts are now trying to be undermined. And basically that's what they do. So when the left or the tribal left and others, the establishment, the Democrats, whomever, if you're not on board their narrative, when you're not part of the program any longer, what they do is they try to make you look as foolish as possible. They try to undermine your capabilities. They try to question your credentials, as it were, in other words, because that's why they're always so focused on authorities and authoritative voices and all that. But it's only because of their popularity contest mindset. And of course, it's all about popularity because to them, popularity is the highest virtue in their mindset. If something is popular, that means that people understand it, people accept it, people value it, and it's part of a worldview or part of a culture. But that's just their perspective. So from Metro here in the UK, prominent vaccine scientists banned from Twitter for spreading anti-V content. Okay? Now, I want to make it perfectly clear that I am not this term that I can't use here probably. But anyway, no, I am anti-mandate. And they continue to use this anti-V because they know it is part of their narrative driven. This is where they want you to focus your attention. Not on anti-mandate, of course, because that's a valid claim to be anti-mandate, because that's something you can say you are against without any type of conspiratorial ideological criticism. But if you say you're anti-V, then of course you can perpetuate that narrative. So that's the other side of the game. Besides the fact that the mainstream media considers themselves to be the authority, they also like to wordplay and word game and frame things. A U.S. virologist who claims to be the inventor of the mRNA vaccine technology has been banned from Twitter for spreading anti-vaccine content. Now, the way this should read is not being part of the establishment's narrative. That's the way it should read. It shouldn't be spreading anti-vaccine content. No, it should be because he's not on board with the establishment. Dr. Robert Malone has amassed over 500,000 followers, but the scientist was removed from the platform after sharing a video about supposed harmful effects of the Pfizer vaccine. Now, notice how they had to put the amount of followers that he has, which is 500,000. That's a lot of followers, because it's always the significance, right? It's always the significance, because they could say, well, this person has 1 million followers, so obviously only having 500,000 is really not that significant, is basically what they're trying to do here. Twitter has not commented on the decision, and it's unclear whether the banning was automated or actioned by a human. Now, this is a constant thing that goes on all the time. When the platforms make a mistake or they ban someone and then the person comes back with, here's the reason why, then they say, oh, well, it was the AI that did it. It was the AI. It was, it was the holiday, or it was this, or it was that. So the AI caught it, and it wasn't until a human did a review on it that we realized that maybe we should have made that decision. Now, this doesn't necessarily always happen to any particular Democrat that I'm aware of, particularly like AOC, who spent the weekend mocking DeSantis. But you don't see that happen to them in the echo chamber of Twitter. As I just showed you from the tweets from this article, where they're obviously mocking the CDC, but none of these individuals, there's no claim here. Oh my gosh, running with scissors, that's so dangerous. She's inciting people to now, or they're inciting people to now run with scissors. This kind of exaggerated nonsense. We're not seeing that now. But look here. Dr. Robert Malone, the inventor of the mRNA vaccine, tweeted a video explaining from the data about the harms of the Pfizer vaccine and the problems with its clinical trials. For this, Twitter suspended his account. This is the level of censorship on Twitter, just V propaganda. Now, here's the thing. Dr. Malone is not some random individual person. He is an actual virologist. He is a medical professional. He is one of the authoritative voices that speaks on behalf of these types of, or what we're going through here in the pandemic. So this isn't some random dude, right? This isn't some random guy out there posting on Twitter. This guy's a legit individual who has most likely been, because he says it in his, in all his background and all his information, the inventor of the mRNA vaccine. Absolutely. And even if we go over here to the Atlantic, known for their extraordinary left tribalism, the vaccine scientists spreading vaccine misinformation. Again, this should read spreading non-narrative information. Look at the wording. Spreading vaccine misinformation. Look at the exact wording. Spreading anti-vaccine content. The wording is nearly identical when they do these things. Robert Malone claims to have invented mRNA technology. They keep saying this. Claims. He claims to have invented. He didn't claim it. He did. He is the authoritative voice. He is the person who did it. Why is he trying so hard to undermine its use? Now, see, here we go. Here we go. This is what they do. They undermine. The left undermines. The Democrats undermine. The mainstream media undermines. The establishment undermines. See, they're using their own language. This guy is not some... this guy didn't just come out of the woodwork and just start making claims. Robert Malone, a medical doctor and an infectious disease researcher, recently suggested, of course, as you know. So here they are. They're validating who this man is. They're saying, yeah, he is a medical doctor. He is an infectious disease researcher. And not only that, they're qualifying the fact that the man is the individual of the inventor of the RMA. I keep saying RMA. mRNA. Wherever he appears, Malone is billed as the inventor of mRNA vaccines. In his Twitter bio, I literally invented mRNA technology when I was 28, says Malone, who is now 61. If that's true, what do you mean if that's true? He did. He did. The man is up for a Nobel Prize. What do you mean if he did? What do you mean if he did? That's so stupid. This is the nonsense game they play. Look at President Trump. 2.5 years of this Russian collusion nonsense was complete nonsense, but the media promoted it. The mainstream media and the establishment promoted and perpetuated an idea that was completely based on a false premise. And here, the guy who actually invented the mRNA, and they're trying to say, if he did it. Right? Right here. Let's see what we have here. According to one of the recent studies, the innovation from which he claims to be responsible has already saved hundreds of thousands of lives in the United States alone. There's talk that it may soon lead to a round of Nobel Prizes. Well, guess who it's going to go to? It's going to go to the doctor. It's going to go to Dr. Malone, man, because he's the one who came up with it. So, now listen to this. I want you guys to focus on this very carefully. Yet, instead of taking a victory lap, this is them admitting that he is the guy. Yet, instead of taking a victory lap, Malone has emerged as one of the most vocal critics of his own alleged accomplishments. In other words, right here, Dr. Malone, you're not on the narrative, you're not on the page, so we cannot give you the credit. We cannot give you the recognition. No, we have to undermine your work. Even though we know you are the inventor of mRNA, we still have to bring you down, right? We have to take you down a few pegs because you're not on board. And because you are an authoritative voice, because you are a virologist, because you are a medical expert, because you are the inventor of mRNA, we've got to take you down a notch. We've got to pull you out. Look what they did to President Trump, a sitting president of the United States of America. Joe Rogan leads move to Getter after Twitter bans Dr. Robert Malone, Rep. Marjorie Taylor Greene. Now, Marjorie Taylor Greene was also banned. Now, you got to understand something here. It's one thing when people make the argument of a private platform, right? It's a private platform. If it's not Robert Malone or if it's not Taylor Greene, if it's just an ordinary, typical person, the argument from the left, if someone is removed is, but it's a private platform. But you got to understand something about the argument that continues to go on, and one that we've had here many, many, many times. Marjorie Taylor Greene is an elected official, right? Her voice, her platform is the public square, which is what Twitter has acknowledged. They have acknowledged it when it comes to AOC, and they acknowledged it when it came to President Trump. When President Trump was being sued, right, for wanting to block people on his personal account, Twitter said, no, President Trump is the president. He is in the public square. Okay, well, it was all public square up until the January 6th mostly peaceful protest. But now we have Marjorie Taylor Greene, who has been banned along with Robert Malone. So if you guys are wondering, I am on Getter. And of course, the big news all across Twitter and across social media is the fact that Joe Rogan is now on Getter. And you guys, of course, can follow me here on Getter. I'm at 220 followers thus far here. I joined back in July of 2021. I'm always jumping on new tech because this is the direction that we're going in. And when someone as big as Joe Rogan leaves Twitter and goes on to Getter, he's huge, gigantic. I mean, Joe Rogan is probably the biggest podcaster in the States and incredibly popular, very influential, and the media just can't stand the fact that he's influential. And we've talked about this many times about popularity being the mark of what the establishment and the Democrats and the left consider to be when someone has achieved a certain level that even they can't really compete with. And so, of course, what they have to do is they have to resort to their nasty, dirty little tabloid nonsense of undermining and attacking someone's character like they did with Robert Malone. And, of course, he's been removed off Twitter. Jack Dorsey has stepped down from Twitter, and they have put in a new guy who is about 10 times worse than Jack Dorsey could have ever been. It's just a dumpster fire on Twitter. Yes, I know I'm on there because I do it for the gaming purposes back when I was doing a lot of gaming. That's how I got in contact with many of the developers and so forth. And I can go into that in the next video. But I really wanted to bring this to your guys' attention. And I think this is what I really want to focus on right here. The establishment media is alerting readers. Right? The establishment media is going to be pushing a narrative. And here's what it comes down to. Now, here on the BuzWeaver channel, we take the complicated, we take the confusing, and we make it simple. The reason you're seeing the current Omicron variant, the reason you're seeing this kind of tit-for-tat back and forth, even with the left going after the CDC, is that Joe Biden is not going to get anywhere near the 70% he wanted. So they're having to dial this back. And over the weekend, I want to jump on this real quick. Let me go over here to it. I apologize for not having brought it up earlier. Let me go over here to the mass index from the BuzWeaver channel, the massive, huge, gigantic index, because I think this is worth mentioning here. The NBA and NFL surrenders to their vaccine refusers. There's always a new name, isn't there? And this is from The Atlantic, by the way. There's always some new name. There's always some get-up that the media has to use. Always some kind of language here, but I love it. The Brooklyn Nets have officially ended their tug of war with Kyrie Irving over the star point guard's vaccination status, and Irving, who has refused to get the C-19 shot, is unquestionably the winner. Now, in this article, it goes on to mention the NBA and the NFL, but this was so satisfying to see this right here, and it's just falling apart. Joe Biden is not getting his 70%. The media and the CDC are contradicting each other. I mean, even the left can catch on to the fact that you have CEOs out here trying to change the rules, trying to change the narrative, trying to change the direction. And like President Trump said, if the media ever came out and identified all of the accomplishments that he had, America would pretty much be in a golden age. But it's never going to happen. Unfortunately, there's this constant tug of war between the powers, between the establishment, between the political parties, between the political tribes, and now the cultural warfare that we have now as of 2016, basically, when we saw the rise of woke culture, cancel culture, outrage mobs, and of course, we're still dealing with this across social media, which will be part of what I'll get into in the next video. But this is something very important that I wanted to bring to you guys about the continuing narrative that we're going to see going into 2022, not to mention what particular variant they could potentially have, or what sort of illness and severity of the illness there'll be by the time we get to the midterms, which could the early voting could start as early as June. So it'll be very interesting to see. So thank you for the likes, the shares, and the comment. We're kicking 2022 off. I'm looking forward to interacting with many of you guys in the newer content and the newer concept for the channel. So for all of you guys on Rumble, Odyssey, and BitChute, thank you for the likes, the shares, and the comments there. And of course, all of you here on YouTube, you very loyal, very dedicated fans of the channel, thank you so much for all that you guys do. And appearing there on the screen, that'll be the channel icon for YouTube. You guys here on YouTube watching this can click on that, or the red button below the video caption there to subscribe to the channel. Your support is always greatly appreciated, and I will see you guys in the next video.